What's up, guys? Marcellus Williams, aka TheSwolefessor, Educational Health and Social Wellbeing. And today, I'm going to be getting you guys caught up. Getting you guys caught up in terms of what training has been looking like, in terms of kind of how we finish off this macro cycle with the past couple of blocks. Let you guys know what training is going to be looking like for the next, at this point, 10 weeks going into my next meet, which, just for those of you who don't know, officially is Carolina Primetime. This is going to be the third and final Carolina Primetime that is ever done. So I'm very, very happy and excited to be doing this meet, just because at this point it'll be, I've done all the kind of like really big hype local meets as far as the Corrupted Strength Classic, the Texas Barbell Syndicate, as well as Carolina Primetime. I'm going to be talking to you guys about kind of what my specific goals are going into that meet, as well as kind of, breaking a few things down in terms of the programming differences that we've made between kind of what the quote unquote off season looked like, these past few blocks compared to what things are going to be looking like for this prep model the next 10 weeks going into the meet. So we're going to be breaking all that down, so let's just get right into it. So to start off, my last week 3 and the week 3 before that were not good. they were not how I wanted things to go. So the last training videos you guys saw was from actually the a couple blocks ago. So like not the end of this past block or the block before that, but the end of the block before that, where you guys saw me hit that 540-pound squat double, which was great. Like, momentum was running very, very high this training cycle. As I told you guys before, 2021 was arguably my best year of training, because I literally PR'd every single block that year. Squat, bench, deadlift, accessories, everything was just going really, really well. And of course, going into 2022, I dealt with a lot of life transitions, a lot of different changes, right? Like, I had a daughter, my client roster increased, took the biggest team that I had at that point to nationals. Just a lot of things that I had to kind of get used to and acclimate that first half of the year, as well as the fact that I, was filling out the 83 kg weight class, but they changed the weight class, so then I cut it back down to 75 kg, and that was kind of like going back and forth between 75 and 82 and a half. Just a lot of different changes that were playing a role with things, as well as the fact that we were trying to really finalize, okay, what works best for me programming wise, how do I like to approach things from a technical perspective with my squat, bench, deadlift. We're just tinkering with a lot of things, right? But going into this year, the year we're in currently, 2023, I felt confident that, okay, I'm going to be able to make this year my best year of training, which I definitely still believe that, because you guys have seen how well the training's been going. We hit the 639 deadlift PR. The baseline on bench has been super high in terms of what I've been able to hit while still under the amount of fatigue that I'm in with the amount of workload that I've been doing on bench, hitting huge squat PRs, the 518 PR triple on squat, and the 529 PR double, then the block after the 540 PR double. But since then, things got kind of crazy. So as a quick recap, in terms of how things went a couple blocks ago on the week 3, I was feeling really good, feeling really strong, was warming up on my squats, and things were going super, super well. But when I got to my top set of squat, which was 551 pounds, which in my mind was going to be a pretty moderate attempt. Like, I didn't even go into the session like as hyped as I usually would for a week 3. I went in intentional, but in my mind, it's like, okay, I just hit 540 for a double the block before this. Going up 5 kg and hitting it for 1, this should not be crazy aggressive at all. And then I'll push more aggressively the next block. But as I was going down, on the way down, I felt this weird sensation in my shoulder. And then the moment that I hit the hole, it almost like a pop where my shoulder just almost went forward on me. So I couldn't push through that at all. And because I lost tightness up here, it made my lower back fold almost immediately. So that felt really, really weird. And I got it, my spotters helped me get it up, racked it, moved it around, felt a little bit of a sensation, but thought, okay, I should be good. I should be chilling. Not a big deal. Let me just load it up, and I'm going to try one more time, because it felt great on my back, legs felt strong, everything felt locked in. So I was like, okay, a little bit of weirdness there. Let me just try to maybe wedge the bar a little bit lower, make sure it's sitting where it needs to, and then go from there. So tried it the second time, and this time, as soon as I started going down, I felt pain immediately, like a very sharp pain. I can honestly say, out of any powerlifting pain or ache that I've felt in powerlifting, this was easily the worst one as far as what it felt pain-wise, like a 10 out of 10 in regards to pain. Like, mind you, I've had stuff that didn't feel as painful, like 5 out of 10, 6, 7 out of 10, that restricted my movement. But even though this didn't so much restrict my movement, the sharpness of the pain was very, very high. So didn't go down, racked it, and it was this thing where anytime I tried to pull my shoulder back or retract at all, there was just a whole lot of pain in the entire rear delt and upper trap area, throughout the entire right side. Now, even though it's still very painful, once again, it didn't restrict my range of motion. I could still move around. I could still get into position. So in my mind, it's like, okay, well, I'm going to try to do these back downs, because I need to try to get this workload in. I don't want to lose momentum right now. Even if I couldn't get the tops that I wanted, I still want to get the workload in. So got in the bar and was able to actually get through all my back downs. most painful thing I've ever done in terms of squatting. Like, despite having certain back tweaks or hip pains and stuff like that, this was easily the most painful thing. Like, you can literally see it on my face how uncomfortable it was. I was able to push through it, had a lot of my friends who were also clients there supporting me. And it was really, really cool to me at this point where it's like, man, these are clients that I poured into when they're going through hard times, when they're going through injuries, and now they're able to kind of pour into me as I'm trying to push through this, right? So very grateful to them for that. Because in the moment, like, it was awful. It felt really, really bad. But was able to get to the squat back downs. Bench was kind of like a high and low because I went in and hit the assigned load that I was planning on trying to hit, which was 375 pounds. And my wars were actually flying. Like, my wars were moving so well where I was like, yo, I could probably PR today if not for the shoulder. But I was like, you know what? Let me just take 375 because I think I can manage that. So after I hit 308, which flew, I loaded 375 pounds on the bar. And the thing with all my warm-ups was on the way down, it felt totally fine. And then when I got to the chest, I would feel a little bit of discomfort because I'm in this position, right? But then once I pressed off the chest, it was fine. That was not the case with 375-pound bench. The moment I started coming down, it felt very uncomfortable on the whole right rear delt area. On my chest, it felt extremely tight and uncomfortable. And then even pressing off the chest. So the initial press off the chest felt fine, but when I got about halfway up, sudden sharp pain again. But I was still able to finish the lift. So I was actually really happy about that because it was like, okay, on one end, I'm pissed because, man, if not for the shoulder issue, I probably could appear off the bench today. But on the other end, hey, I can hit my comp best, which you guys know 375 pounds is something that I was chasing for a long while until I finally hit on the platform at the Crunch Strength Classic. So to be able to hit that, even under those circumstances, was huge for me. As far as my back downs, I did my first back down set with what would typically be the assigned load, felt too uncomfortable, lowered the weight down, and got through it. Deadlifts on that day were the ones that, at this point, with how squat and bench went, I was totally fine with just not pushing it at all, even though it was the one I was supposed to push the most because I had a 9 assigned. And if I felt like a PR was there, I was supposed to go for it. And honestly, my wars were moving great. I wasn't really feeling this at all. Like, I couldn't quite wedge into it the same way in terms of like tightening my back as much, but it wasn't the same pain or discomfort that I was feeling. So I was just warming up. I was like, hey, I'm just going to go based off the warm-ups. I'm just going to take what's there. And my last warm-up, 595 pounds, flew. It moved just as well as what 606, only a 5 kg difference, did the day I hit the 639 PR. So in my mind, I was like, okay, it's one thing if it's like, hey, I feel really bad on the deadlifts and I don't want to risk pushing anything with how squat and bench went. But because the wars were moving well, I was like, okay, you know what? I have to detach myself from how squat and bench went, focus on the lift that's right in front of me, and just go for it. Because that's the thing, right? In the same way you don't want to push through to try to make up for a lift if that lift's not feeling good. You also don't want to like unintentionally pull back on a lift if it's going the way it's supposed to. Just move as the way that you would, right? And at this point, in my mind, even though I was really upset after the squat, and even though I was like kind of feeling during bench, at this point, I felt very objective with everything. It's like, hey, I'm gonna go in, I'm gonna try to pull what I can. If it goes well, awesome, that's a win for the day. If it doesn't, that's okay. I understand the circumstances for the day are no longer ideal. So I ended up putting 650 pounds on the bar, just 5 kg more over the 639 that I hit a couple blocks before. Got off the floor and actually was feeling really good off the floor, but then halfway up, probably due to the fact of how much heavier the weight was and feeling it like kind of protract me more, I started to feel the sensation in my shoulder again. So I just put it down. Just wasn't worth trying to fight through or push through if I think it was going to become a very serious injury. And at that point, it was kind of alarming because it went from being a sharp 10 out of 10 pain to not feeling anything in this area. Like, not even like numbness. It's like I could not feel this area at all. Like, I was kind of like pounding into it. I was kind of, pause. I was kind of having Michael like hit me there, and I couldn't feel anything. So at that point, I was like, okay, I'm not going to do back downs. I'm just going to call it for the day. Go home, eat, rest, and see how I feel tomorrow. Because it's one of those things where I knew I wouldn't really know how bad it was until the next day. And I already knew that if I hyper-focused on it or got super concerned with it and stressed myself, I was only going to make it worse. So I just went home, ate, watched a few shows, chilled with my wife and daughter, and just relaxed. And then the next day, really wasn't feeling anything at all. I could feel the area, I could move it normally, a little bit of tightness, but no crazy sharp pain. I was able to bench later that day just fine. And after going through some accessory movements, felt even better. So not sure exactly what was going on with that, but I do know that I was good to go once, I got through the whole rest of that week. There was no pain, no discomfort. Now, the good news is, in going through that, even though it would have been really easy to just be like, oh, okay, the shoulder thing threw me off, that's it. I'm the type of person where whenever a lift doesn't go the way I want, I go back and I just evaluate everything. And with my evaluation, I did kind of discover a couple things. The first one was realizing that, you know what, the bar wasn't quite sitting where I wanted to on my back. And that's because I remembered that something that I learned from the Crunch Strength Classic is that the rack heights with the new TSS racks are a little bit different than the old ones that I'm used to. I already lowered my bench rack height. I'm usually on bench rack height 7 on the old TSS racks, but ever since training at Lone Star with the new TSS racks, I've been on bench height 6. But I never changed my squat rack height just because it was kind of moving well and I didn't want it to be too low. But once again, I reminded myself that, hey, at the Corrupted Strength Classic, I did having to change my rack height last minute for my last squat. Now, by that point, it didn't really matter, but it did feel better. So that's what I ended up doing the rest of that week whenever I came in to squat my secondary day, was changing the rack height down to 8. And that's what I've been on ever since. And that's felt so much better. Even though it's kind of low and I have to kind of almost mini squat off the bar, I can set it exactly where it needs to be. So in that frustrating session, I was able to still get some good information and turn that into a W in a sense, or what will lead to future Ws as far as that, right? So that's how that went. Then with the block after that, it was more a thing where it's not so much that the block didn't go well. I just wasn't really able to push things the way I wanted to just because my variables were not good with all the circumstances going on. I handled that to Arnold. So traveling, eating and sleeping was not on point. And then, had that entire week afterwards just to turn right back around and had to go handle at the Rising Tide meet the following weekend where eating and sleep just were not on point. So like sleep was low, eating was low, stress was high. So I didn't even try to push anything on that week 3, which so happened to fall on the Rising Tide weekend. I just put my focus and energy on handling my clients because I knew that there's no point in trying to force anything. It's just not going to be, it's just not going to feel the way that I want to feel. So that's pretty much how the past couple blocks went overall in regards to that, and the macro cycle didn't exactly end on a high note. Now, with that being said, it would be super easy to get in my head and be like, man, I've lost momentum, things aren't feeling good. And of course, the lifter side of me gets frustrated that the last 2 blocks didn't end the way I wanted to. But when I look at it in the grand scheme of things, okay, those 2 sessions across all the blocks I've had since the Corrupted Strength Classic don't really, not to say they don't mean anything, but they don't determine the outcome of what this prep's going to look like. Once again, I've smashed multiple squat PRs, huge deadlift PRs, bench feels amazing, and to be able to hit that 375 despite what the circumstances were on that day, I knew things were good. And the fact is, despite the fact that, this last block didn't end the way I wanted to, that was more so because I didn't even try to risk pushing anything because there was just no point, right? But I was still really, really happy overall when knowing that, okay, the trend of how we've been doing things have been working really well. And the other piece of data that we got was, as you guys know, we went to squatting twice a week, right, instead of 3 times a week, and then also belt squatting twice a week. So my tertiary squat day, we just had belt squats on that day instead. And of course, we had the other belt squat day on my primary SBD day. Now, with that being said, one thing that we tried differently this past block compared to the block before was on my secondary day, you guys know I typically have like a top set of 5 or 6, and then I have back down 6s. We decided to play with just straight sets of 6. With no top set, no high exertion top set, just kind of like straight sets with a load range, and just kind of taking what I think would be closest to an RP 5 or 6 for that day, and just kind of building the load progression throughout the block. The mindset behind that is I'm still getting like the same amount of volume, but not pushing the exertion very high on the secondary day because I already wasn't. Even with that top set, I was always kind of sandbagging it because, as we've discovered, as you guys know, if I push that secondary squat day too hard, it just nursed my primary for the next couple of weeks. Even if I wait till the end of the block after I've gotten through my heaviest primary squat, if I push the secondary really hard, I'll feel that fatigue still for the next week or two, just due to the amount of fatigue that squat induces for me when I push the intensity really high on both days. So our mindset was, okay, well, let's just go with straight sets and see if that gives us kind of the stimulus that we need. And we feel like it did. Like, it definitely wasn't a matter of not feeling strong on the primary squat day. It was just due to the circumstances and the fact that I was also like 10 pounds lighter. Like, I went into the Arnold weekend weighing like 172, 173. By the Rising Tide weekend, I was like 162, 163. At this point, weight's kind of chilling back in a good spot. I'm walking around like 167, 168. And I'll kind of get into that later in terms of like weight and stuff like that for this Carolina Prime Time. But the point is despite that fact, like, the squat itself still felt strong. It just wasn't worth pushing. So the way we approached that secondary day, we think overall was still good. So we got some good data as far as that. And then the last thing that we also noticed while I was squatting though and got to heavier weights is, and this is happening before, but I've kind of gotten this habit of when the weight gets really, really heavy, I try to be too tall. Like, I stay really nice and tight upright. I'm really good and efficient at driving my knees forward, but because I initiate so much by driving the knees forward, even though I try to let the hips break at the same time or right after, I end up being almost too upright, and then when I get into the hole, I kind of just tilt forward, and that can cause the bar to roll on me. Whereas when I focus instead on initiating my squat by sitting my hips back first, not excessively and then laying the knees forward, but just sitting back first slightly and then laying the knees track after that, I feel much better. The bar stays over midfoot. I'm in a good position in the hole, and I can drive through. So that is something that we've really been emphasizing so far this block with this first week. And now I'm pretty much going to take you guys through what my training looks like as of right now, as far as like the differences between what we're doing in the quote unquote off season compared to what we're doing right now and why. So as far as Saturdays, my day one, my primary SBD days, the squats are pretty much set up exactly the same. We're rerunning triples now, because you guys know we did triples, doubles, doubles, then singles, singles. Well, now with the amount of time we have going into the meet, it's going to be a block of triples, a block of doubles, a block of singles, and then a final block of singles where we just build into the meet with that final block. So right now, we're rerunning triples. So this past week, start the block nice and easy with a top set of 3 with 452 pounds, which is actually, I believe, the heaviest start point I've done with triples. Because I think last training cycle when we started triples, I did like 441 the first block and then 446 the second block. So we did 452 pounds, once again emphasizing like that slight sit back with the hips first and then laying the knees track forward. This is actually the first day I was really emphasizing it, so it felt a little awkward at first, but then I was able to kind of catch my groove as we got to the back downs. And the back downs on that day were just a 17% drop from the 452, so 375 pounds. And those felt really, really good as far as squats. So as far as the way that the squat is laid out, we haven't really changed anything on the primary day. As far as bench, same thing, just worked up to my RPE-based single. And then I had my back downs, my RPE-based single, I ended up hitting 330 pounds to start off, and then I hit 280 pounds for my 3x4. One thing that I'm changing with my bench is not pushing the back downs quite as aggressively as what I did in the off season, because I already know that with benching 5 days a week and the amount of total volume that I'm doing and the range of motion that I'm going through, that it's really good to kind of build that capacity by kind of pushing the back downs more further out from the meet. But as I start to get closer, keep pushing those tops as the way I need to, but let the back downs kind of be, a little bit more moderate in terms of the load, so that the top end can start to shine through better. And with that, I'm going to see the bench start to have like a really big tick up, which is what tends to happen no matter what. Anytime we make any type of change to my bench, whether it's like frequency, workload, it's this acclimation period where I have to kind of push things and get acclimated to everything. But then once I do, I can kind of cruise, and we'll see that top end start to show up more. Now, as far as the deadlifts, I just worked up to my single. As you guys know, even though we cycle through triples, doubles, and singles on the squats, we do singles on deadlift and bench year-round on my primary day. So deadlifts, I worked up to 518 pounds for my top single. The thing that we've changed, as you guys know before, I had 3 back down singles after my my primary single. Now that we're closer to the meet, we're pulling that back, and now it's just a single, because you guys know to really have my deadlift show up more, it comes down to just pushing the intensity and not so much pushing the volume. And mind you, a 3x1 on my primary day and then 3x1 on my secondary day, it's not a whole lot of volume to begin with, but for me, it makes that difference when we start to pull that volume back on the primary day. That deadlift top single starts to show up better. So that's what we expect to see happen this go around as well. And then after the 518 single, you guys know we go right into belt squats for my sets of 8. Started off to 680 pounds plus the Elite FTS bands for my sets of 8, my 3x8. And then after that, we had dumbbell RDLs, which I've been having that on this day, but it got to a point where it's kind of hard to push those the way I kind of wanted to, just because after doing the full SBD day, doing the deadlift, doing the back downs, and then doing the belt squats, I only have so much energy left for the dumbbell RDLs, especially because I push barbell RDLs on my secondary day. But due to the fact that I no longer had those deadlift back downs, I felt really good in terms of doing the dumbbell RDLs afterwards. So once again, right now, it's just 3 sets of 8. So that's how my primary day looks. Nothing's crazy different there. In terms of my my day 2, my secondary intensity bench day, we still have the long pause single. I started off with 140 kilograms, aka 308 pounds for my single. Now, one thing that we changed was after my single on this day, usually I have a top set of 4, and then I have 3 back down sets of 4. But what we started to realize is I really wasn't getting a whole lot out of that top set of 4, other than just having me feel beat up, because it's the day after my SBD day, and I just did a long pause single. So now, instead of having a top set of 4 and 3 back down sets of 4, it's just 4 straight sets of 4. And I just go based upon RPE. And what I'm pretty much just doing is looking at what I did for my 3x4 on the SBD day for bench, and just make sure the weight's under that, and something that I can comfortably manage for the 4x4 on the day 2 bench. So that's what we end up doing as far as that. Then as far as the accessories, we've got the T-bar row. So that's just, something that we've been doing. We've gone from the chest support T-bar row that was at absolute recomp to just the normal traditional T-bar row. So I've been doing that. We've got weighted dips. So of course, I have my top set, which is with the heavier weight. Right now I have a top set of 5, and then I have back down 8. So start off nice and easy with 135 pounds for my top set, and then 115 pounds for the back down 8s, because it was a 15% drop. And then after that, we had single arm seated lat row, which in this case is just the chest supported row machine that I do, one arm at a time. Then we had dumbbell bicep curls, single arm tricep press downs, and then face pulls. Nothing really crazy different as far as that, other than the fact that your boys look a little bit more crafted than usual, if I do say so myself. So that's what my day 2 looks like. It's typical, secondary bench, upper body day. Now, with the squats, what we've changed is, like I said, we went from a top set on my secondary squat day, right? And back down to just doing straight sets. But the one thing that we found with the squatting twice a week was, even though it was better for my overall fatigue management, like on my lower back, and making me feel better from a health perspective going to my primary day, is my primary squat day just never felt quite, even though it felt strong, it didn't feel quite as in groove movement pattern wise as what it did on my secondary day, which makes sense because my primary squat is on Saturday. My secondary squat is on Monday. And then I don't squat again until Saturday. Even though I do belt squat on Wednesday, it's not quite the same pattern, right? So not to say that I was feeling detrained, but the movement just wasn't feeling quite as in groove as what it did when I did have a third squat day, whether it was SSB or light assigned load, whatever it may be. So what we've changed this time around is, on my secondary squat day, instead of having 3 sets, we have 2 sets. So I have 2 sets of 5, just straight sets at a specific RPE that is set. So I started with 160 kilograms, 352 pounds for my 2x5. And then after that is the same thing we've been doing for the tertiary bench day, which is Larson. So I have my top set of 5 on Larson press to start off with 110 kilograms, which is 42 pounds, and then 2 back down sets of 5 with 8% less with 220 pounds. And then, since we are only doing 2 sets of squats on this day to kind of make up for that volume-wise, we are now doing leg press. Now, you guys know I've done leg press before, but where I've messed up is, it would usually be like, okay, 1 belt squat day, and then a leg press day, and then maybe like leg extensions in between that. But we now know, for me to really drive my squat the way we need to, I have to have 2 belt squat days. So we're still doing that. So I have the belt squat on Saturday and the belt squat on Wednesday, but now I have leg press in between. So that way I'm just doing everything I can to really maximize my lower body growth and development. So at this point, I'm doing RDLs, I'm squatting, I'm pulling conventional, I'm doing leg press, I'm doing belt squats, I'm doing double RDLs, along with leg extensions and leg curls, because after my 2 sets of 10 leg press on this day, I have my 3x10 leg extensions as well as my 3x10 leg curls, right? Now, like I said, we dropped a set of squats from this day, and you'll kind of see what we did with that later. But before we get into that, so after that, we have then my day 4 bench day, which is what it's always typically been, which is my higher rep comp bench day. So I have a top set of 7. We start off with 264 pounds for my top set of 7. Then I had 2 back down sets of 7, did 8% less with 242 pounds. And then it's like more of my straight, easier machine-based accessory work. So I have a row choice. So I've been doing a single arm kneeling cable row because that's been feeling really good, just to hit my back from a different angle. Then I've got the hammer strength chest press, which I love this chest press because it's set up the way that I just like, a very straightforward chest press, but the loads actually can get up pretty heavy. Like right now I'm doing 245 pounds for my sets, and I think this gets as high as like 300 plus, which is great because the 245 pounds wasn't like super easy. So I know it'll take me some time to finally build up and max this machine out, which is great for me. And then we had, cable lateral raises, and then tricep movement of choice, which you guys know I like to go with, single arm movements because that's been really good for my triceps. So on this day, single arm overhead extensions is what I went with. Now, with that being said, going into Wednesday, which once again, this is the day where I was just focusing on my secondary deadlift pulls, my RDLs, my belt squats, we now have that tertiary squat day back. Now with this tertiary squat day, it's just a 2x3. So if we kind of look at it, right, I went from doing a 3x6 for my secondary squat day and no comp squat on the third day to now it's just a 2x5 on that day and a 2x3 on this day. And the reason that we broke it up that way is so that way the overall collective volume and workload is pretty much the same as what it was when I was squatting twice a week. So that should keep the fatigue still well managed. But I'm now having this increased frequency so I can get that additional practice on Wednesday. That way it hasn't been as long when I come into Saturday since I last squatted. And to make sure that the load stay managed on this day is the rule of thumb that Brad gave me is to always just do 5 to 10 kg less than whatever I did on Monday. So I'm just going with 10 kg less just to make sure this day stays extremely sub-max. So I did 160 kg on my secondary squat day. So for this day, I did 10 kg less than that, 150 kg, 330 pounds for my 2x3. Once again, still just really emphasizing the slight sit back and then laying the knees strike forward immediately after that. Then after that, we still have the secondary deadlifts that we do on this day. So just, my 3x1, it's a 2x1 on week 1, but then it turns into a 3x1 for weeks 2 and 3. Starting off nice and easy since we're, you guys know that we start around like the 70% range at the beginning of last macro, and then it got as heavy as like the 80% range. So I was doing my singles like 485, 490. Well, now we scaled it back to that 70% range to start off this macro cycle. So just an easy little 3x1 with 441 pounds. And then after that, we still have my 2x5 on RDLs. You guys know RDLs are a big driver for my conventional. So start off with that with 374 pounds for the 2x5. And then after that, we still have belt squats on this day. And I did 540 pounds plus the bands. And then just to make this day a little bit harder since it's lighter, I just didn't use my knee sleeves on this day. So I'll use my knee sleeves on my heavier 3x8 day, won't use my knee sleeves on the lighter 2x10 day, and we'll make sure that, I use the bands on both days just to still keep the movement consistent as far as the progression in that way. So that's what my squat day looks like now. I'm back to squatting 3 days a week. Once again, keeping the workload the same as what it was with 2 squat days a week, whereas before when I was squatting 3 days a week, this third day would be like, SSB, RPE based with percentage drops where I was pushing a little bit more aggressively. Just keep it nice and easy. It's purely like a skill practice day, so I feel in groove for the primary day. And then my day 5 bench is still the same as it's always been. I have my easy 2-count close grip single, which I start off with 297 pounds. Then I have a top set of 8 that's RPE based. So I started off with 253 pounds for my top set of 8 at about an RP6. And then I have 2 back down sets of 8 with that based upon a percent drop. And then the rest is some nice fun upper body accessories, lat pull down machine, dumbbell incline, which I'm very happy with. I started with 90 pounds, which is the heaviest weight I've started with on dumbbell incline for a week 1. So definitely we're going to be getting into the 100 plus range this block as far as that. Single arm cable row, dumbbell ladder raises, and biceps of choice. So as you guys can see, there's not drastic differences between what I was doing in the off season and now my prep. Because as I tell you guys all the time, we're always prepping. And there really shouldn't be huge drastic differences between your off season and your prep unless there has to be. Like maybe if you do more variation in the off season because you have to stay healthier, that makes sense. Or maybe if you don't, touch as heavy lows, or maybe you don't do singles as frequently in the off season because you need a break from that, that makes sense. But overall, whatever you do to get stronger in your off season is probably what you're going to do to keep getting strong during your prep, right? Like I said, your prep might be a little bit more specific in terms of like the lows you're touching, doing singles more often, maybe not pushing accessories quite as hard, at least when you get a little bit closer. But overall, it should look the same all in all. So you guys can see how things are going there. Now, in terms of the difference with my squat, we're probably not going to shift this back. I'm probably not going to go back to squatting twice a week when this meet's done. I'm probably just going to keep things the way it is now, because whatever's going to drive my squat to progress well consistently, I'm going to do. Because I know I can handle comp squatting 3 times a week, so long as I keep the load super sub max on that tertiary day, especially, and just treat it as more of a practice day. So that's what things are going to be looking like for the next 10 weeks. When we started this block, it was 11 weeks out. But like I said, coming up here on this upcoming Saturday will be 10 weeks out. That's what things are going to be looking like. And my goal with this block is to just hit a reasonable triple. If it ends up being a small PR like 523 or a bigger PR at 529 for a triple, cool. If it ends up being below that, like 507 just for a comfortable triple, I'm fine with that. My plan is to kind of let the squat kind of like just take what's comfortable this block. The next block for the double, push that more aggressively. Then my block of singles, just kind of take something comfortable and then push more aggressively for the single going into the actual meet. Because I know how my squat kind of fluctuates, and I've talked about that before. Bench, just continue to let it trend up. When I feel good enough to push it, I will. When I need to just take what's there for the RPE, I will. And same thing with the deadlift, because when you're playing with singles year round, you're not going to PR at every block. You got to just build momentum and set your fitness up for when it really is time to pull back and then push the top end. So that's what we're doing as far as that, as well as just trying to, as course as always, get as jacked as possible, because when it comes to my leverages, we know that I make up for that by maximizing my muscle mass. So that's what we're doing overall, right? Now, with that being said, in terms of weight class, due to the fact that I've, lost the weight that I did this past week, even though I've kind of gotten it back up, me and Brad have talked about it. And at this point, I'm more than likely just going to do Carolina Prime Time as a 75 kg lifter. After this, I am full on committed to actually finally fully out 82.5 kg, not just chilling around 170, 173, but actually getting 175 plus and eventually chilling at 181 pounds, 82.5 kg. And I made Brad promise me that after this meet, do not let me go back down. And the good news is, at this point, I know I can do it. Like the eating, I don't know what shifted this year, but the eating's just become easier. Maybe it's just from constantly trying to force feed for the past few months, but now it's just really easy for me to hit that 3,900 to 4,200 range when it comes to my caloric intake. Right now, my macros are 200 protein, 520 carbs, and 120 fats, and I've been able to nail that easily. And on days where, like, if I go eat with Amber, go eat with my family, and like I eat something that I can't track, I still get my assigned macros in, and I'll just eat that extra food on top of it, because we all know in my case, eating more is better than like not tracking it and possibly being under my macros. But it's been really, really easy to do. But at this point, it's more about, it was two things. One, the fact that Carolina Primetime is a dots-based meet, and my goal is to go in there and secure a 500 plus dots. And my goal is also to secure that 700 kg plus total at 75 kg. And that's a big reason why I'm doing it. Even though I could easily just chill at like, 169, 170 and not cut it all. I know that I said that I felt like I was content with how things went at last year's Nationals, where, I was a 75 kg lifter. I went 8 for 9. I did really well handling my guys for that week. But the fact is, at that meet, I was one bench attempt short from a 500 dots. I ended up hitting like a 497 or 498 dots. And even though, like, yeah, that's close enough, good enough is not the same thing as actually being good enough to hit my goal. And I'm the type of person where I just can't leave it. I can't leave it like that. I can't leave it unsettled. I want to be able to go into Carolina Primetime, right? Smash that 700 kg plus total, get that 500 dots as a 75, and that way I can truly say, okay, cool. I'm done with everything I want to do in this weight class. Now I can commit to just getting big as strong as possible. And of course, over time, my dots will get maximized. I feel at the 82.5 kg weight class anyway. But initially, the dots will take a drop off. But I want to be able to look myself in the mirror and say that I didn't walk away from this goal unfinished. So that's the big thing about it for me. And then on top of that, right, on top of wanting to, hit that total, hit that dots, I also have a nice little bet going on with Jonnie Candito. And you know what? I'm actually going to let him go ahead and talk about that.
Yeah, so it's true. I told Marcellus if he gets near my all-time Wilks, which is 515, that I'm going to have to come back. Even if he reaches 510, I would say that's the time when I would start benching 6 days a week just behind the scenes, and I'd gear up for it. But he would have to actually break it for me to step on the platform. But if he does, at any point in time, you better believe I'm benching 6 days a week, squatting 3 days a week, deadlifting twice a week, no variations, no high bar ass to grass, none of that. Because I remember when Marcellus was out-squatted by Omar Isuf, I believe, back in the day. He was with Pump Chasers with Chris Jones while I was going to IPF Worlds. And he's going to overtake me? I mean, I can't let that happen. He might want that to happen. And I commend him for the progress on the business and all of that. In a 500 dots is quite an incredible accomplishment. So go for that 500 dots. I think you'll hit that. That's elite. And then after that, I know that you emphasize being well-rounded. So I think you should decrease some of the barbell bench frequency after that. Bring that down to 3 to 4 times a week. Focus a little bit on some machine lifts. Just get a pump. Be a family man. 500 dots that's the sweet spot. But if you think you're going to overtake Jonnie Candito of Candito Training HQ, you got another thing coming.
All right, so as you guys can see, heard it from the man himself. That is the deal that Jonnie and have going on. So beyond just wanting to hit the total that I want and the dots that I want, if I get past the specific dots that he laid out, if I beat that, Jonnie Candito has to come back to the platform, which I don't know about you guys, but I want that. I want this man back. And it's actually really, really cool for me to go from, Jonnie being someone that, you just respect the industry and you watch his content, to becoming good friends to where we can have this type of rivalry, to be at a point where it's like, man, I've actually gotten myself good enough to where I'm somebody where I can make Jonnie Candito want to come get back on the platform just so he can try to beat me when I beat his dots, because I am going to beat his dots. It's going to happen. So I'm very, very excited about that. As well as just the fact that, once again, like I said, this is the last Carolina Primetime. And Carolina Primetime is a meet that means a lot to me personally, just because there's certain key meets that have happened for me in my coaching career that I think have played a big role in kind of where things are at today. So the first one, of course, would be 2019 Nationals when I was coaching Michael C. And even though he had those full body lockup cramps on deadlifts, with the way things were going at first with squats and bench, he actually looked like he was projected to very much beat Taylor going into deadlifts, which was crazy. And that was like, that's my first time handling at Nationals, my first time competing at Nationals. And I always tell people, even though TheSwolefessor and this channel has been around since being in 2016, started in 2017, I always say that I feel like craftsmanship or team craftsmanship really started with Michael in 2019. And then the next thing that happened after that was Carolina Primetime, because that week Petrie competed at Carolina Primetime and he won. And then in that same week, so I was at Carolina Primetime, and then on that weekend, and then in the middle of that same week, I was in Florida handling Ashton and Jamar and Bob. Jamar got his 700-pound squat in competition. Ashton, got his his national win and came back and beat Bryce Lewis. And then at the end of that week, on that weekend, I was back in Texas handling 10 plus lifters at Europa. So it was just a crazy week of coaching and handling for me and traveling and getting through all that. And it started with Carolina Prime Timing. And getting through that week, I think, is when a lot of more eyes kind of got on the coaching and the team and the recognition. So for me, Carolina Primetime is a really big deal as far as that. It's also the fact that Petrie will also be doing Carolina Primetime, which is what he was planning on doing anyway, but now it's kind of a way to kind of make up for the Arnold, to kind of show what he can really do before we build into nationals. So it's kind of cool to go from, hey, at the first Carolina Primetime, I was kind of able to kind of solidify myself even further as a coach at the level that I was at that time as a coach, right? By coaching Petrie, and now I get to come into this meet and compete alongside him, and in my mind solidify myself as a lifter that I know I am, like show that I am a 500 dots plus lifter, show that I am a 75 kg capable of hitting a 700 kg plus total, because even though yes, there's lifters that are like, you know, dotsing at this point almost 600, and there's 75 kg lifters doing like, you know, 730, 740, 750, it's still not a super common thing to hit a 500 dots necessarily. It's still not a super common thing to hit like a 700 kg plus total at 75 kg when you look at powerlifting collectively. So for me, it's just something where I'm really truly excited to be able to solidify myself at the last Carolina Prime Time. Like the fact that it's the last one just kind of makes it hit a little bit differently. So I'm coming in ready, man. Like I said, I'm nailing my macros, I'm nailing my sleep, I'm managing my stress. Anything that is not related to coaching or my family or close friends is just a distraction that's getting put on the wayside right now. Or powerlifting now, because, you know, got to make sure I'm taking care of business as far as that. But that is what my main focus is really just dialing in over these next 10 weeks. And that way, when I go on the platform, no matter how the day goes, I won't be able to look back and say that I have any excuse. I can't use my daughter as an excuse, not that I ever have. I didn't use her as an excuse going to nationals, right? I still showed up. But it's like, I'm not going to be able to say that, this happened because I was on top of this variable, that variable, I was doing this live stream, or this live stream. Like, no, I'm just going to dial everything in, show up and show out, and leave it on the platform. And I'm very excited to do so. But yeah, I know this was a longer one, but like I said, I had a lot to get you guys caught up on. Looking forward to, like, you know, kind of just taking you guys through this prep. You already know we're going to have a nice little prep series. I got to come up with a name. I got one in mind, but we'll see if I go with it, as well as to continue to share, you know, different form of content here on this channel. But yeah, that's it for the video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, go leave a comment down below and let me know what you did. If you not, leave a comment down below, let me know what can be better. Like the video, share, subscribe. Keep it simple, specific, scientific. I'll catch you guys later.